Welcome to today's SC Chats. Just so everyone knows, SC Chats really provides everyone in the state, all the service coordinators, an opportunity just to share your knowledge, your experiences, your resources. I will ask today that feel free to type and join any discussions in the chat box. We're going to really utilize that today. If you have anything that you want to share, please feel free to. We really welcome and encourage that. And just so everyone knows, SC Chats are held quarterly, and at the end of it, I'll let you know the save the date for the next SC Chats. My name is Lisa Terry. For those that don't know me, I am an early intervention professional development consultant with the Virginia Early Intervention Professional Development Team at VCU. I also am endorsed in infant mental health, and then I'm also a certified trainer with 0 to 3's Growing Brain curriculum. So this is really where we're going to pull this information from today. That's where I got the 5 R's of healthy brain development. I am also joined today by Corey Hill, and she's going to provide some backup support. Corey, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. As Lisa said, I'm Corey Hill. I'm the Early Intervention Professional Development Specialist, and I look forward to work with you guys and helping Lisa on the back end.
Wonderful. So as people are coming in, please go ahead and mute yourselves and hide your videos. I'm going to go ahead and stop mine just to kind of help save the bandwidth. And we are going to go ahead and get started. Okay. So today we're going to talk about implementing the 5 R's of healthy brain development. So the 5 R's are relationships, responsive interactions, routines, respect, and repetition. And as service coordinators, all of you really have this unique opportunity to really think beyond the paperwork that you're always completing and all of those other challenges, coordinating and organizing everything. But think about ways that you can actually make a valuable impact supporting those families and helping them to nurture their own child's brain development. So today we're going to discuss each of these 5 R's. Okay, so just to get us started, I want us to start thinking about how we support brain development. So go ahead and type in the chat box how you support brain development in your role as a service coordinator. Thank you, Corey, for dropping that question in the chat box. So Michaela says, encouraging healthy parent-child relationships. Yes, telling parents to talk to their kids all day long. So encouraging those opportunities, encouraging their play. So that parent-child interaction, talking to families about developmental milestones. Yeah, so really educating them, helping the family to recognize the need that they need to help their child and help them access resources and activities. So yeah, so you're really increasing those learning opportunities for their child as well. Provide the family information on those routines. Yeah, so giving them all that information, discussing the milestones, encouraging interaction, and providing ACEs that help to stimulate the brain development. And using coaching methods with families and how they interact with their babies. Yeah, and modeling those recommendations. Absolutely. And encouraging positive talk, family time. Yes, you guys are on it. Feel free to continue to type in chat. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. And as you guys can see, even as these suggestions, you are all really an important influencer of change. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 5 R's of healthy brain development, and then we're going to really focus on a case study, and I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms towards the end. Okay, so the 5 R's, again, it's relationships, responsive interactions, respect, routines, and repetition. So let's think about how you can really be intentional in supporting each of these components. So let's talk about relationships first. So here's a typical family, right, that we might see, and it's obvious that this child has a natural attachment to their caregivers. He's looking, he's intrigued, right? The parents are smiling at him, they're bonding with him. And these secure attachments, they are absolutely essential. And sometimes as service coordinators and early intervention, we might work with a variety of families, including children that may have be babies that are in foster care. And in those cases, sometimes they can have multiple different caregivers. So there's a lot of change in their lives, in their relationships that they're experiencing. And it's really important to remember that all of these trusting relationships that children have with all caregivers, it's really important. So whoever the caregivers could be, their grandparents, their teachers, maybe at childcare, their foster parents, these are really important. But research does only show that a child needs one strong positive relationship that is essential for healthy brain development. So at least one strong positive. So we want to really encourage at least one positive relationship, but we also really want to encourage those trusting relationships with other caregivers. And when we do that, children can really focus the most on their important task learning through play and developing those positive relationships with children and adults because they are feeling secure, they're feeling safe, and their social emotional needs are being met. And children who don't always have this opportunity to form bonds, that's when they can experience poor brain development and exhibit a lot more behavioral issues. I remember one time I had a case where I went out to do a consult, and in this instance, it was a little girl who was in foster care, and it was her second family that she was with. And it was really clear as soon as you went in that she did not have any kind of secure attachment to this family, nor did the foster care provider feel any kind of warmth towards this child. She just didn't feel that connection with her. And so that was really something that had to be focused on because without that, that's where this little girl was showing these behavioral issues. And that's where she couldn't really focus on learning as much because of that. And so it's really important to identify that and look for that as we're observing these relationships within these children's lives. Because children who do not form it, that's where they're experiencing this poor brain development. And so think about even ways when you're at assessments, when you're just going out and joining the visits, how you can observe this relationship and attachment. And so that's going to take us to our next chat question, because we really talked about how we want all caregivers to form trusting relationships with their children and how we want them to support them. So think about all the caregivers in early intervention and how can you include all of those caregivers in a child's life. So think about how you might do that and go ahead and type that into chat. Oh, I see, Maria, you said encouraging self-care for families. Yes, I love that. Love that you're attuned to that. Invite dad in to participate. Yes, Joanne, absolutely. So think about ways, because sometimes we're used to only dealing with maybe one primary caregiver, but think about how can we include the father if he's not there, he's always at work, or maybe he's on deployment, or maybe there's a caregiver that's also in prison too. Those are things that are really happening. Yes, ask who all the caregivers are. So finding out video, yes, I love that. Really incorporating that. Helping each caregiver understand their strengths as parents. Yeah, because they all have individual strengths. My husband and I, we are different caregivers. I am more the nurturing role, and he definitely plays more with our kids in that aspect of it. Schedule visits at different times of the day. Yeah, so finding out when is the other caregiver, when are they going to be there? Use group texts. Yes, so maybe messaging both caregivers in a group text. Flexible scheduling. Yep. Making sure everyone's included in the conversation. Give them a role. Yes, Kylie, absolutely. Identifying what their role is and giving that to them. Text both parents for updates. Yes. Inviting them to be part early on, yes, as the intake. So including them, even when you're making that first initial phone call, you know, just telling the family, like maybe you really want to have all caregivers present. That's really important. Including those that are present in the conversations, yes. Keeping everyone in the loop. Communication is key. Yes, Paige, it's so critical. Asking the best way to communicate with them. Yeah, so making sure that we're asking them, how do they want to communicate? How can we best reach you? Accommodating and alternating times. Absolutely. Great, you guys are on it. So now let's talk about responsive interactions. So I want you to think about interactions that you've had with other people that might seem very brief. So whether it is a significant other, it's a colleague, it's a friend, think about those brief interactions with maybe they were really distracted and they were on their phone, or maybe they were very short with you. They weren't really looking at you. They weren't really engaging with you. They were giving you short answers. So think about how that makes you feel. So go ahead and type that in the chat. How does that make you feel when somebody is very brief, they're very short with you? Yeah, like I'm not important. Yeah, that's how you feel. I'm not important. Yes, I'm not heard. They are disinterested in what I'm saying. Yes, Helen, makes me feel insecure that they're not listening, nor do they hear what I'm saying. Yeah, they're not interesting or they don't know your role. Like they don't care. Absolutely, you are all right in those feelings. And that's because you're not feeling like you're truly seen, you're heard, or you're valued. And when children feel genuinely seen, heard, and valued, that's when they feel safe and secure, which is really a key component of what we already talked about, those strong relationships and healthy brain development. And responsive interaction. So when we think about that as a whole, it's really when we are following the child's lead and we're reading their verbal and nonverbal cues. So those are those back and forth reciprocal exchanges. It's not just that one-way interaction where the adult is telling the child what to do. And so when we think about all the complexities with some of the families that we're working with, sometimes there's some families that they might be busier, right? And so they have multiple things that they're trying to juggle around. And so having those back and forth responsive interactions may be a little bit more difficult because they might not always be in tune and they might have more brief interactions. And those back and forth interactions, I'm sure everyone knows, those are called serve and return. And we all know how to work within routines, and that can occur during diaper changes, meals. And we want to see those serve and return interactions, right? So let's think about that a little bit more. Think about some of the serve and return interactions that you've observed and go ahead and type that into chat. So what type of serve and return interactions have you observed? Taking turns, yes, in a game, talking back and forth. So validating what the child's saying. Child's playing with toys and parents are identifying the colors, rolling the ball back and forth, interactive songs. Yes, the baby looks at mom when she hears her voice. So she's very attuned to that. When mom speaks directly to the baby. Oh, Kylie's a car. Yes. Peekaboo. Oh, it's such a great serve and return interaction, right? Nursery rhymes, clap your hands. Yes, peekaboo. The child points and the parent turns to look. Yes, so they're showing the same interest, shared interest. It's very important. Absolutely. Let's go to the next one. Respect. Everybody knows that song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. But when we think about respect, we don't always think about necessarily like respecting a child. We think about respecting other adults. And so, Corey said, sing it, Lisa. I'm sorry if I hurt y'all's ears. But we always think about really respecting the way that we respect other adults. But it's really important to think about respecting a child. Remember, we talked earlier and we talked about making the child feel seen and making them feel heard, right? And so when we think about respect, we're treating that infant or that child as valuable individuals, and their communication efforts for their preferences, for their needs, those are important. So we're telling them, what you're saying to me, yes, that is important. When we feel disrespected, so think about like a time that you might have felt disrespected. How do you react? Like, what's your first initial gut reaction when you feel disrespected? And feel free to go ahead and type that into chat. Let's think about that. When we feel disrespected, how do we react? What are our feelings? Yeah, you tend to turn away. You put up a wall. Yeah, don't disrespect me, shut down. Your insecurity pops up. You get irritated. Yes, I get irritated too. Your defenses go up. Yes, like how could you treat me like this, right? Shut down, you get very defensive. Yeah, and so you have strong emotions. And when we experience these negative feelings, one thing to remember is that it's really difficult when we have big feelings going on right now inside of us. It's difficult for us to engage those top functionings of our brain. And that's where we're really thinking, we're planning, that's your executive functioning. And so these functions are really important for learning, right? And that's what we want a lot of the children in early intervention to do, is to learn. So we want them to be able to access all those top functions. So it's really important to find a balance of setting those limits, addressing those challenging behaviors in ways that are really teaching and guiding the child versus shaming or punishing the child. So there's a difference. So you really want to help support the caregivers in finding ways to teach and guide versus shame and punish. So essentially what we're doing is we are showing empathy. We are also modeling empathy for all of those strong feelings that children have. And we're really seeing misbehavior as an effort to cope. So that is why they're doing it. It's to cope with a challenging situation that requires understanding and support. Yeah, when defensive aspects arise, other important skills and aspects are hindered. Yes, absolutely. So we really need to teach parents generally, just about respect, what that means, see how they're valuing their child as an individual, because that's not often something that we tend to think of when we think of respect. So let's think about that in your role as a service coordinator. How can you support respect between the parent and child? Go ahead and type that into chat. How can service coordinators support respect between the parent and child? Listen. Yes, Karen, listen. Teach them how to listen, read their child's nonverbal cues, right? Be a role model. Yeah, so you're modeling it for them. Encourage parents to praise good behavior, listen to, respond to children when they speak to you. Yes, remind them that this promotes healthy brain development. Yeah, and I think it's really hard sometimes too, because we tend to feel control and we want the child to listen to us. So really acknowledging how to respect that child's individual needs. Yes, treat everyone, oop, I lost it. Treat everyone's comments as important. Yes. Parallel process. Demonstrate for the caregiver. Yes. So we're getting into some modeling, encouraging parents to acknowledge their child's feelings. Yeah. And that's the same thing. You can also model that. Providing positive feedback. Yeah. So really pointing out the strengths. Recognizing important opportunities for parents to engage with their children throughout the day. Yes. I love that. Practice active listening, which is really a skill. That's a skill that does take practice. Provide resources for positive parenting. Yes. Read cues, know developmentally appropriate expectations. Yeah. And so sometimes parents don't always know that, right? All right, let's go to the next one, routines. We are all so familiar with routines, but we're going to think about routines this time in aspects of healthy brain development. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about a routine that you have during the week. So it's something that you have to do every single day during the week. What kind of routine is it? So you have that in your head? Okay, so now think about what happens if that routine gets interrupted. So for example, I like drinking coffee, and so I have a Keurig, and every morning I like to get my K-cup and I put it in the Keurig machine and I sit down and work and drink my coffee. So what if I went to the pantry, I opened the door, and there's no coffee there. It's all gone. There's no more K-cups. I can't have my coffee. So then you kind of start to feel out of sorts. Yep, I'm there with you. Must have my morning coffee. Throws my whole day off. Yes, it would be a sad day. You feel off. You feel discombobulated. You throw a tantrum. Yeah, I feel like throwing tantrums too and things like that. Yeah, so we can understand, right? You feel grumpy, you feel on edge. So you're just anxious, you're out of sorts, you're off the rest of the day. So when we think about how we feel, now let's think about how children feel. So when disruptions or any kind of lack routine makes very young children, they feel the same way. Yes, and Paige says your mind tends to be on that for a long time instead of moving forward. You're right, Paige, because that's where it's kind of blocking what you are, your ability to learn and to focus, right? So this predictable sequence of events, it really helps build those brain connections, and it also supports memory and organizational skills. And children, when they have those routines, they also build a sense of security. It helps them to know what's going to happen, how, when things are going to happen, and it creates that sense of safety, calming those bottom functionings of your brain so you can access those top functionings. And that's where you exactly what Paige said, that's where you're really focused on your memory and your focused attention. So what I'm going to have you do is take a second, get out a pen and paper. So grab a pen, grab a paper. Everyone got it? Okay, I want you to think about a routine for a child. So write that routine down on your paper. Now, I want you to think about all those other micro routines. So think about those steps within that big routine that you wrote down and write them. So what are the steps within that routine? Now, I want you to think about what if that routine was disrupted in the child's life? How would that child feel? And it's hard because there's all those other micro routines, right, within that big routine. And any of those disruptions can really throw that child off. So let's give an example. So this is Noelle and her mother, and she has an older brother, James. And last night James had an event at school. So their whole family had to go. We know that's not going to happen right now because of COVID, but let's think pre-COVID. But he had an event at school. So they were out really late. And by the time they got home, Noelle's bedtime routine completely got thrown off, right? Mom was super tired. She was just ready to get in bed. She had to work the next morning. So she just put Noelle's pajamas on and she tried to lay her down in bed. Noelle threw a complete tantrum, right? There's a temper tantrum, a complete tantrum because normally her routine is really taking a bath and then brushing her hair, brushing her teeth, putting her pajamas on, getting good snuggles and reading a book and then getting laid down for bed. So that was completely thrown off for her. So she had a lot of emotions and she didn't want to go to bed. So let's think about this. So what kind of questions can you ask the parents to help them reflect on how their child may be feeling? So take this scenario, for example. What if you went to support Noelle and her family the next day and her mom was like, we just had a terrible time last night. She wouldn't go to bed. She was really crying and screaming. What kind of reflective questions could you ask that family? What was different? What was different about yesterday? Yeah, sleeping routine disruption. Is there anything you may have done differently that night outside of your normal routine? Yeah, what did you do differently? Were you off on your routine? Was there something different about last night? Yeah, and what kind of questions could we help her really tune into how Noelle may have been feeling too? Tell me what you're noticing. Ask her what a typical night looks like. How did you handle this behavior in the past? Yeah. And we really want her to reflect on, like Noelle was thrown off. Her routine was completely thrown off, right? How did you handle this behavior in the past? Yes, tell me what you're noticing. Great, great questions. So keep thinking about that, and we're going to go to the next one. And the last one, which is repetition, 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 repetition. So the brain establishes connections in response to experiences, right? We all know this. So the more an experience is really repeated, the stronger the brain connection related to those experiences. This is why we have early intervention and we have early services from birth to 5, because we know that a child's brain is 80% developed by the time they're 3 and 90% developed by the time they are 5. So reading the same stories, hearing the same songs, going on the same walks, that stimulates the senses and the muscles and those skills involved in the activities. And it really triggers our memory, right? And so when we think about repetition, cognition, language, physical skills, and social emotional abilities can all be supported through repetition. So I want you guys to I want you to fill in the blank for me and type this into chat. I'm sure you've heard of this phrase. Okay, ready? Practice makes blank. Perfect. Yes. Perfect. 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 Everyone's heard that. Yes. Yes. Perfect. So in truth, practice makes permanent. So not necessarily practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. So the brain needs all of those learning opportunities to try something over and over again to really cement those neurological connections. So we repeat things to remember. Remember, like when you're little and you're playing that like ABC game where you're like, A is for apple, and then the next person goes, A is for apple, B is for ball, and you just keep going. And that's practicing to remember things over and over again. So we repeat to remember. However, there's one caveat, and that is that when you are introducing skills that are beyond a child's reach, that will not build positive brain connections, and rather it's going to cause a lot of stress to that child, as well as their confidence is going to go down. So they could really begin to associate that activity with negative emotions, which may really interfere with their love of learning. So this is so important for us to remember, because in early intervention, we're always pushing and pushing, right? But you really want to build on those strengths because you don't want to interfere with their love of learning. So instead of flashcards, for example, that's why we introduce counting by setting the table at night or going up and down the stairs, something that they're doing all the time naturally, right? So this really goes back to neuroplasticity. We got to give children numerous learning opportunities. Okay, so last chat question before we go into an activity. So I want you to go ahead and share an example of when a child or family practiced something where you observed permanence. Working with the child to determine what toys, learning to put a simple puzzle together. So they're repeating some of those play skills, their memory is really triggering those movements to do that. Learning to sign eat, yes, and getting food. The child may continue to sign even when they have the language skills to ask yes. And that's because that's repetition. Their brain is telling them, okay, I went to eat. I'm going to move my hand to sign eat, because that's the memory that has been ingrained in them too. So sometimes it does. It takes a little bit for that to leave. Practicing 2-word phrases when talking about a child's favorite toys. For example, big truck. Yep. So you're giving that repetition. That's a big truck. Every time you see a truck, big truck. Eating with utensils. Yes, that's something that they practice every day. Great. You guys go ahead and feel free to keep typing. I'm going to move on so we can spend most of our time in the activity. Yep, the child knowing what's on the next page, learning to walk. Yes, yes, yes. Repetition of reading a routine. Yeah, so it's all important also to make sure that we're building a child's confidence in all of those. Okay, so if you're really looking at the child as a whole, then you really have to look at the 5 R's. So I really want you guys to really take in these 5 R's and just be intentional about how we're applying it when we're supporting families. Corey said the mom asked the child to do something and the child fussed, so the mom did it for him. Sorry, this is negative, but we all see that happen. So, so this is where the mom isn't always supporting, right, his learning opportunity, and she's kind of doing it. So that might also be, in a sense, the repetition for that mother, right, as well. And so you guys go ahead and respond. Like, let's throw this back out to everyone. How would you help that family then in that instance? What would you do? So you guys type in the chat and I'm going to keep going. Okay. So I want you guys to meet Lucy. This is Angelo's mother. She referred Angelo, little cute Angelo, oops, I got too happy moving my screen. She referred Angelo at 19 months old to early intervention for language and behavior concerns. Angelo, he says mama, and he always cries to get his needs met. Well, Lucy reports that Angelo is having a hard time with transitions as well as adjusting to new people and places. So his father, Thomas, he recently returned from deployment after a year. And this has been really hard for the family, right? Understandably so. This has been exceptionally hard for them because Angelo right now is clinging to Lucy all day. And he cries immediately if she tries to leave the room. We've all supported numerous families, right, where this is happening. And Angelo has begun waking up several times at night. His mother, she is feeling overwhelmed. She's feeling tired, and it's really frustrating for her because it's hard to take care of things around the house because he's following her around, right? So Thomas stated he's feeling frustrated because Angelo cries no matter what he does, and he cannot figure out what he wants. And they do have some support. So Lucy's parents, they live in another state, but they'll actually come visit and they'll help care for Angelo. And as a service coordinator, you're gathering information about Angelo and his family, and you observe now that he cries when he's placed in his father's lap. So I want us to really think about the 5 R's of healthy brain development, and I want you to think as a service coordinator how you could support Angelo and his family. And what we're going to do in this instance is we are going to do a breakout group activity. And so I'm going to put you guys in groups of probably about 6 people in each group. And Corey is going to go ahead and paste into chat the link for the handout. I'm going to actually give you guys 10 minutes in your group. So you're going to spend a majority time with your group because I want you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves, give your name, where you're from, but I also want you to say how long you've been a service coordinator. And whoever has been the service coordinator the longest, I'm going to ask if you don't mind going ahead and taking notes and sharing the information when we get back as a large group. But don't worry, your teammates are there. Everyone's a team. You can still contribute via chat box. And I just also wanted to mention, so on the handout that Corey just pasted in chat, what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the 3rd page. So on that page, it's going to be a blank page, and you're going to look at, just choose one of the R's that you want to focus on that your group does, but choose a reason of impact So for example, for relationship, what's the reason of impact? And then what are some strategies to support the child? On page 2, you'll see I just kind of gave you an example, but I really want to push you guys to think, because that's just a general example, but think further as your group. So let me get you guys moved over. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and type that, and I'm gonna work on setting you guys up.
Well,
So let's go ahead and discuss this for the next few minutes. So if you were identified as a longest service coordinator that's worked as a service coordinator longest, go ahead and type share into the chat. And I'm going to actually just ask you to unmute. We'll get through maybe a couple or a few of you just to kind of share your team's discussion. All right, let's see. We'll go ahead and start with Corey Hall. So Corey, do you want to go ahead and unmute and kind of share?
There we go. I couldn't unmute. I'm sorry.
No
All right,
problem.
my team's gonna hop in when they're ready. We looked at the routine. Well, we looked at 2 routines. One was dinner time, and one was bedtime. And we originally came up with bedtime first, and we said that mom and dad would work together during that bedtime routine. And the whole underlying premise, I think, was mom would slowly introduce dad and slowly turn those responsibilities over to dad. And that would give her some downtime at the end of the day, which would be nice since she's been handling everything for the past year and plus. So the other one was dinner time, and that was the one we started a conversation not long before our time ended. But we said that would also be a good one because both parents would be present during the time, and the little guy could see that mom had trust with dad, which would transfer over to him. And mom would not go anywhere. They would be awake because sometimes the nighttime and going to sleep is scary for kids. So he would be awake and they would be able, mom and dad would be able to work together to transition and take turns with some of those dinner time responsibilities.
Absolutely, Corey. I love your team's discussion. And really, it sounds like, I love how you focus on like certain routines, but you actually added some more of those components as well, because you're really focused on those relationships and you're focused on repetition too, and even the interactions. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Let's see, Rhonda, do you want to go ahead and unmute and share?
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. So we kind of just went through the 5 R's and listed each one and how we could maybe assist a family in that situation. So like with relationships, encourage doing things together, slowly introduce dad into routines like feeding and bathing. For the routines, having dad come up with some routines that they can do without mom, like, we're going to go to the park, something that they can do to get dad kind of acclimated back into Angelo's routines. For responsive interactions, because he's clingy, getting other family members involved could maybe help with that. Or we could talk to mom and say, hey, is there a specific time of day that he seems to be more clingy? And then we could find a solution like, okay, does it seem like he's more clingy around time that he might need a snack? Or if he's like going to be clingy at 1 o'clock, we can go outside, and that would maybe be a helpful distraction. And for respect, acknowledging how Angelo feels, that he's frustrated, and maybe give mom the emotional vocabulary she needs to help Angelo to deal with his frustrations. And then possibly maybe given choices, like if he's frustrated because he doesn't know which snack he wants, then offer him 2 choices, not a bunch, just 2. And then for repetition of routines, we thought maybe a visual schedule would benefit. Talk to mom about, hey, what does your day look like? And we could do a visual schedule so that if he knows what's going to happen, maybe he will be less clingy and more secure in his surroundings. That was it.
Yes. Yeah, I loved all of those suggestions. And it's so funny because as you're like talking about it, I'm like, oh, those would be great, goals. Those are great outcomes, to really think about and incorporate. And so really, and that's what this handout's really designed to do. It's really something that you can use to be a little bit more intentional in how we're supporting those families too. Thank you, Rhonda, and your team too. Let's see. Jay Sanford, you want to go ahead and unmute?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my team and I, we didn't make it quite all the way through all 5 of the R's, but we talked about some of the routines and some strategies that we could use. And so with regards to like relationships, we talked about including his grandparents a little bit more and introducing him to, certain situations in the community, maybe introducing him to other individuals when they're out at the library or at the playground, in the grocery store, in order to help him to familiarize and become more comfortable with other people and other kids his age. Also, we discussed some strategies to sort of help him to become more comfortable with dad, such as including dad in some of the play activities and like implementing some turn taking activities during play with dad, such as maybe rolling cars and trucks back and forth, playing with balls, maybe taking turns looking at books and looking at pictures in a book so that he can become more familiarized with having dad in some of those fun daily routines. And also we discussed the importance of the family working together to support one another in those daily routines, specifically during the nighttime routine. Maybe dad can come in and alleviate mom when she's stressed and having difficulty at night. Maybe they can take turns when he's home, take turns waking up during the night and helping to meet his needs and implementing the strategies that we come up with as a team. So those were some of the things that we discussed.
Those are great things. I absolutely love that. And I was thinking too, like when you were talking about like even the socialization piece, like that's a lot about like repetition. You're thinking about how can he have those experiences outside in the community with other people. And so a lot of times we work with families, even just saying hi and bye and really getting him to socialize. And so the more he does that, the more it really cements in his memory. So thank you for sharing that. I think we might have time for maybe just one more. Let's see who's next. Maddie, if you don't mind just unmuting, and if you could just give like one quick strategy that you have that maybe somebody else hasn't shared.
We really just talked about incorporating, since the grandparents are already doing like the, reading a story via FaceTime, including them for sessions with dad, since he's comfortable with them, showing that there's that normacy, that person that of comfort there already on that FaceTime, that including him with that might be helpful.
Yeah, so really including the grandparents and that's that part about making sure that all caregivers are included. Well, thank you everyone. For those that didn't get to share verbally, if you want to type into the chat box, feel free to do that as well. I see that Paige did it. So let's go ahead and so I just wanted to let you know. So for these handouts that you received, this could also be a great activity that you guys take back and you can share with your program and really dive in deeper together a little bit more. But feel free to use the blank handout with any of your families as you kind of have to think a little bit more outside the box. How can we help support this 5R? So let me tell you what's coming up next. So the next SE Chats, the good, the bad, and the funny, is going to be all about tele-intervention and service coordination. So save the date. It'll be on April 22nd, 2021 from 12 to 1 p.m. and we'll have more details go out. If you guys are not following us, make sure you're following us on our social media because that's where we do a lot of announcements for SE Chats. This will also be recorded and it'll also be accessible on YouTube as well. So we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, a LinkedIn account now, that's new. So make sure you go ahead and follow that and Corey will drop the links for there. Also, to receive your certificate for today, Corey went ahead and dropped the survey. Once you complete that survey and give us feedback, then your certificate should populate. And if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me, email me anytime that you want. And I'd love to speak to you. So thank you all so much. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a fantastic day.